You're listening to Leisure World Direct. I'm your host, GRF Communications Manager Emma DiMaggio, and I'm here with Interim Executive Director Dave Potter and Senior Director of Mutual Administration Jody Hopkins. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Today's topic is the Stock Transfer Office and how it works. So to start, can you briefly explain to me what the Stock Transfer Office is?
Well, I know some people probably think of it as the equivalent of Leisure World's title company, but unfortunately that's not quite correct. And for starters, it's because it's the stock transfer office, not the title transfer office. You tend to transfer title when you're purchasing property, which doesn't happen in any of the mutuals except for Mutual 17, because Mutual 17 is a condo. All the rest of the mutuals are stock cooperatives. And what you're actually purchasing or owning is the stock certificate that gives you the right to occupy the apartment that's associated with that certificate. So anytime that certificate transfers, that end of the transaction still goes through our stock transfer office and our fine team that's down there. You still go through an escrow process because typically you're selling a unit in order to buy into Leisure World Seal Beach. And there is a normal escrow transaction for that, but your escrow company will deal with our stock transfer office to transfer the stock successfully. Jody, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that or if I oversimplified it.
No, that's perfect.
So the instances that someone would physically enter the Stock Transfer Office are when they are coming into Leisure World for the first time, or maybe that would be on behalf of the escrow company. They would go for them, or when they are selling a unit. Is that correct?
Those are two very common instances to go into the stock transfer office. There are other things that may come up. You may need to update your stock certificate. If a husband and wife purchased the apartment stock together and one of them is deceased, you may need to update your certificate at that point. You would go in for that. If you need to add somebody, delete somebody, do that. Putting it into a trust, doing anything with it. There are a host of reasons that you can go in there. And many of them aren't even related to stock transfer. We also issue IDs through there. We do pet registrations through there. There's actually a lot of general information that is dispersed through stock transfer simply because it's one of the offices that shareholders can go into here. A lot of the other offices are I don't want to say that they're closed, but the access is more limited to GRF directors or mutual directors.
So when a resident is entering for the office's primary purpose, transferring stock, what does that process look like?
Sure, that's a great question. If you're with an escrow company because you're selling your unit, you'd want to start with the escrow company first, and then we deal directly with the escrow company. So if you came into the office to ask us where do you go from here, you choose an escrow that you would like to work with. Once that happens, then the escrow company will forward on to us a notice of intent to withdraw that allows the mutual to know that you want to sell, and also the Golden Rain Foundation that you're going to be leaving the community.
In situations where an escrow company isn't involved and people have to bring their own documentation, let's say the owner of the property has died, the process probably looks a little bit more complicated. Can you take me through what people should bring to the stock transfer office, or where they might be able to get a checklist to bring beforehand?
Sure, absolutely. If one of the individuals has passed, we will start with the escrow company, and they will have to provide us all the documents that are needed. So to establish yourself as legal authority, you would need to give us your government-issued current ID, the two stock certificates. There's the mutual certificate and the GRF membership certificate. You'd have to give us those. If it's in a trust, we have to get trust approval first. Once we establish legal authority, then we can move forward with either the sale or the transfer of that stock certificate or that stock unit.
So one tip that I want to add to that really quick that I've kind of learned in my time here, I think it's important for you to do some estate planning and speak with your heirs a little bit about things. When a shareholder dies, it is a GRF policy that a potential heir will have access to the unit for 15 minutes to locate the stock certificates so that they can be presented to the stock transfer office. That can be a very overwhelming task to accomplish if you have no idea where in the apartment they might be. So I encourage shareholders to keep those certificates in a designated space, perhaps in a really easy to identify folder or some other protective device, and then make sure that your heirs know where that is. For example, it's in the red folder that's kept on the floor of the closet in the main bedroom. So that way, in that 15 minutes of time, they know where they're going and they know what they're looking for to be able to find to keep this process moving.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dave. If you have a stock certificate that is assigned into the trust, and we can go into that further later on if we want to get into the details of it, but once it's assigned to the trust, the certificates need to be with that trust. So your certificate shouldn't be separated from the trust if you've assigned it into the trust. If you've not assigned it into the trust and there's still somebody alive on title, then we can deal with the person that is alive and just need a death certificate for the person that has passed. If by chance you're the only one on title and you pass away, that is where we run into the problem, and that's where the individuals get kind of upset with stock transfer staff, because we are not attorneys, so we can't guide you on the legal advice, and all we can tell you is you're going to have to hire a probate attorney. If you're the only one on title and you pass away and you do not have a trust and you do not have it assigned into the trust, it is going to have to be probated. In the state of California, you will have to probate.
I spoke to stock transfer staff prior to the episode, and they shared that a common misconception they get from people coming into stock transfer is that their parent perhaps has passed and they're ready to go into the unit to clear things out, to claim the unit maybe for themselves, to start moving in, and that's not possible. Can you tell me about some of the legal ramifications of not verifying that someone is the correct person, maybe to let into the unit?
Absolutely. So the first thing we're going to ask you for is the stock certificates, because that's going to tell us if it's in a trust or if there's another person on title. So in the stock transfer office, we cannot just give anybody the legal authority to enter that unit. So you have to have your affairs in order, and whoever is on title would be allowed to have access to that unit. So if a husband and wife pass away, but both of them pass away, then we're looking for the next of kin. If we don't have that information available to us, we will not be able to allow you in. You will get that 15 minutes. And the ramifications is that you're kind of like renting the space inside. You paid a lot of money for it and you have the stock certificate, but you own one share in that mutual. So we have to make sure that we are giving over the proper documentation to the individual to make sure that they are the heir of the property.
Yeah.
If I can add to that quick, the concept of a stock cooperative is actually very, very rare in California. I think there are maybe 30,000 stock cooperative units in the whole of the state. And most people will look at the situation that we have here in Leisure World Seal Beach and they'll just assume that it's like a condominium. And it's a whole different kettle of fish as a condominium. With the stock cooperative, the physical ownership of the property lies with the mutual in whole. And we call them apartments here, even though they're not truly apartments in the legal sense of the word. But in a lot of the legal requirements and the legal nuances of it, they are like apartments. And it's because of that there are these restrictions on, well, if the owner of the stock certificate and the person who has the ability to occupy the apartment, if that person has passed away, we now have legal obligations, or the mutual has legal obligations as the owner of the property to make sure that that property only goes to who legally has the obligation for it. And that's why we have to go through all of these processes. And I know it will sometimes seem like we're doing it to be a bureaucracy gone mad, but we're really trying to make sure that everybody's rights are protected.
I'm sure that comes into play in situations where someone comes saying that they'd like to clean out their family's unit and they're frustrated that they can't get in, but you're also protecting the well-being of the possessions inside their unit. You know, you don't want to give access to someone's unit to anyone and have them make off with the family's jewels or whatever.
Correct.
Exactly. If someone passes away and they have 3 children, but one of those children, they don't want to have their stuff upon their death. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily know that. But if that child shows up and we give them access to the unit and they take all the family jewelry, to use the scenario you just threw out there, that can create all kinds of problems for the other survivors who are supposed to be designated to get that stuff, as well as the mutual and GRF. So again, we have these things here. It does make it a little cumbersome at a very challenging moment for everybody, but it's designed to make sure that everything does work the way it's supposed to and that everything goes where it's supposed to.
It's a large investment.
Yes.
They've put a lot of money into their unit, and we want to make sure it's protected on all sides, the GRF, the mutual, the shareholder, the individuals, everybody. So whoever's entitled to that should be the one that we're dealing with. We do also tell everybody when they come in, and this is really hard to hear once your loved one has passed away, that we are standing there saying, I'm sorry, we need your ID. I'm sorry, we need your trust. I'm sorry, we need documentation to show. So that's why it gets frustrating in the stock office, is because we are known for, no, you can't do that. No, you can't have that. No, you can't go in there. That being said, if you have your affairs in order and you give us the trust, you give us the certificates, you make the payment, the doors will be open for you.
What's the best way for a current resident to ensure that the process of transferring stock in the future, whether it's to a family member or during a move, goes smoothly?
Sure, we get that question a lot. So the most important one would be a living trust. A living trust, you're going to assign your certificates into a living trust, and then the living trust is going to take over. Whatever the living trust says, that's what's going to happen. I want to remind everybody that a will is not recognized in the state of California. So if you have a will and you think that you've assigned it into your will, you will still have to probate the matter. It's not a full-blown probate, but it's called a Hagstad petition, which you still have to go to court, and the court will say, yes, this is their intention, yes, this person's in charge. Then we need that paperwork back, and we have to get it verified with the GRF trust attorney. So we still have to go through that process of verifying that everything is good. Even when we get the court orders or we get court documents, we still have to get it verified. So I'm not an attorney, but the safest way is to have a living trust or to have somebody else on title with you.
Can you also explain to me briefly what probate means for people who haven't had to deal with that before?
Sure. Probate is when you're the only one on title and you pass away and there is nobody else on title and you do not have a living trust. A probate, your family would have to hire a probate attorney. They have to go to court. Last time I heard, the courts are very backed up, so it can take months, even years, for the probate to go through, and it's very expensive.
That's deciding who gets what?
That
during
is
process?
deciding, yes.
And it's even deciding how the process will work sometimes.
That is correct.
If it were real property as opposed to a stock certificate and it was going through a probate process, the court is involved in the sale.
Correct. Yes, we will see sometimes that you are allowed to sell the property, but you have to go back to the court to announce how much you sold it for, where the money's going to. So there's a lot of legal issues that happen, and because we are not attorneys, then we have to get the legal advice to be able to guide us.
So essentially you can save a lot of time and headache by having a living trust.
That's correct.
Lastly, what are some tips that you can give people who are about to embark on their first trip to the stock transfer office?
Patience. I think patience is one thing that we will need. Kindness, because we're going to give you a lot of information and it's going to be hard to digest. On the other side, staff needs to have patience as well, because we have to understand that you have just lost a loved one, or you're the family and it had just happened, you've been locked out. Everybody's emotions are running high. So the best thing I can say is talk about it. Talk to your family, find out what's going on. If I owned the unit, you would want to make sure, like Dave said earlier, make sure that you know where those stock certificates are. Make sure that they are assigned into the trust if that's the route you go. If it's somebody as a non-resident co-owner on title with you, make sure they know where they are, because without those stock certificates, we cannot move forward with transferring this title. There are ways around it, but we do have to go a different route, so I don't want anybody to say, well, if you don't have these, you can't transfer. You can. It's just a little bit more difficult.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I want to add, how do you assign those certificates into a living trust? That is a question that we get all the time. I now have these certificates. What do I do? You simply have to flip them over and fill out the back of both of those certificates, and then those two certificates will live in the trust. We have a document that was prepared by our attorney that we hand out. You're not allowed to do it in the stock transfer office. You can only do it outside the stock transfer office. We cannot look at it and review it. We can only guide you how to do it. We're not attorneys, so you would have to go back to an attorney to make sure that it is done correctly. But you simply just sign it into the trust. And on the details that we give, they're very detailed. So that would be a big help if you wanted to come into the stock office and, how do I do this? We can guide you. We can also guide you on everything else. If you want to register your pet, if you want to register a real estate agent, if you want to change your phone number, if you want to change your address, if you want to come in and say hi, we are there for you.
You have been listening to Leisure World Direct.